Thanks for having me, everybody. I am, well, I mentioned that I'm a PC user now from my Mac, so I've got one strike there. I'm also one time zone ahead. So at 8 o'clock, after working a bunch of 14-hour days, I'm getting rather tired. But um, Rich, Rich and I have known each other, I say virtually, for years and years on Creative Cow. My background is that I used to do corporate stuff, the scripted work or interview based work, and editing After Effects. And of course, as time goes on, you get into audio and you're the juggler of things. Um, and a good portion of my work was event work, multi-camera directing of live corporate stuff with a small portion of streaming. And so moving over to the event world about a year and a half ago, 100%. So I took 30% of my business, made it 100% of my business, forego all this stuff. So it's kind of almost like a reminiscing kind of time listening to you guys talk about all these workflows and all this kind of thing, because it's like, oh my God, I've forgotten all that already. Um, but working, of course, since March in the virtual world, meaning transitioning people's events and conferences and things to a virtual world, some of which is just what we're doing right now. Could be as simple as a Zoom thing, which always isn't as simple as one would think, and all the way up through some other platforms, um, which are going to be a little bit more robust and trustworthy and integrate virtual exhibit halls and things like that. So I do much better, Rich, as we mentioned. If you want to lob some questions at me, I'm happy to do that. And it's really cool because it's odd that the event world was always so different in the equipment that they used, in the lighting that they used, in the controllers that they used, and how they did video. And so then you've got the production guy, which was me, coming in, and it's like, man, you guys have like all this complicated rigging for such simple things. It's like, let me introduce you to the C stand. And now I see many of my vendors who are doing my lighting. It's like, well, now you're buying all this, regular grip gear that we'd use on location production. So I'm like this transitional guy that kind of knows both worlds of
Well, we've been
corporate, from
talking.
creating the content we used to display on the screen to the guy who sets up the LED wall and stuff.
Yeah,
Go
we've
ahead.
been talking about COVID in production, and we had a couple of panels talk about just being safe on a set and how to mitigate issues and how the day goes,
Sure.
basically. So we've been talking about that, but then it started to escalate into like, so how do we connect with our clients from the studio or the set to the client so they don't have to come in? We're going to reduce the number of people to the
Right.
smallest number of people we can on the set, and they don't need to be there.
Hmm.
But how do we bring them there? And so, a lot of different ways to do that. I know that Deck has a thing, that you stream while you're shooting. Some of those things are great,
Hmm.
but at the same time, the latency can be an issue. If they're seeing it 7 seconds later, and somehow maybe you're on a live conference call, and they say, "So what did you think of that?" And they go, "I haven't seen it yet." Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
So what do you think
That's,
about some of those things, getting from the set to the client live during a shoot? What does that
well,
look like?
um, I'll say it can look really, really great. There's a lot of technologies out there. Like Zoom is extremely low latency. They'll sacrifice video for audio quality because as a video guy, I'm the one who's still going to say any production is still 90% audio, and that's what Zoom focuses on. So this is very low latency, what we're talking about. Very interactive, does mix minus audio, which means it cancels my mic while I'm talking and so on. But the tools now are really good, and some of them are just consumer tools, which do really well. You just have to kind of maybe add a black box in between things to make it all work. So utilizing something like Microsoft Teams or Zoom, go to meeting there, even FaceTime. I mean, you can walk around the set and FaceTime somebody and they can get an idea of what's happening, because the purpose of that is show them what's happening on the set in real time and let people help make some decisions as to what's going on. Maybe it's lighting or, you know, direction, whatever.
Do
Um,
you think
but there's
what you're
another.
are you seeing it more like they want to see the set and stand there like they're standing on the set like a director, or they want to see the camera foot of the camera because they just want to see the shot? What do you
I'm
feel
gonna
is more important, or what are you hearing?
well, what I do is we're producing live content from remote locations. So rather than someone just merely looking in and watching what's going on, I'm very concerned about taking your camera feed and sending it elsewhere to be integrated into a production or literally captured remotely and utilized. So there's technologies for that. Um, One we use for a lot of phone-in interviews where we need low latency, high quality. High quality, I'm talking like 25 to 30 megabits a second
Yep.
over standard internet connections. That's pretty
Basically,
ridiculous if you
yeah,
think
decent
about it,
1080
because that's what the EX1s, Sony cameras are recording at that kind of bit rate.
right.
So they're sending that kind of stuff over internet lines. With the technical name is called WebRTC. Works pretty well. There's issues. You're not going to want it for anything that's, you're not doing this with life threatening kind of data. You're not shooting a red on set and we're looking at every tiny little pixel. Um, so the expectations could be a little bit lower. Um, there's other things. I have my little cheat sheet here in front of me. Like the newest one is SRT, which I think is a hilarious name. Secure, reliable transport.
Yeah.
That is what it is.
Yeah, it's like FTP.
It works. It
File
sounds
transfer
awesome, but it's like,
protocol.
yeah. But with that, I don't even know what the bit rates are on that. But when you convert SDI on the set over to SRT, yeah, we're recording that remotely, and it looks amazing. And um, of course, there's always going to be a slight amount of latency. The better video quality you want, there's going to be a little bit of latency. But you can live with these things because we're not looking for interactive full duplex conversations like we're having now. We're looking at getting high quality footage from one location to somewhere else.
Right.
Um, so, it's when we're looking at it from a real-time perspective, what are we trying to do? I mean, I don't understand how network TV shows don't look. The live shows, Regis, what's that? Kelly and Ryan in the morning. How does he look so terrible? It's been since March. It's like 7 months.
Yes.
Everyone else, you've got. I hope I don't offend anybody, but you got this broadcast world out there where you got this $1 million live truck and microwave and yah yah yah, and you got me, and everybody else, little computer nerd who was gonna say, hey, we should try some of this out and see if it works. And with a couple of $100, $500 little black box, we're sending SDI, and once it's up on the web, guess what? 10,000 people can watch this same signal simultaneously. It doesn't have to go to a single destination anymore. It's like making a phone call, your conference call. This signal or IP's up there, everybody can grab on it anytime. So multiple people can watching different things simultaneously. The biggest thing I think right now in the hurdle of that industry is like the Democratic National Convention. The guy's directing 40 cameras at home because all he does is have SRT feeds coming down, and there's an IP based ClearCom type system directing all these camera people.
Yeah.
But this is
By
so
the
in
way,
social distancing, we're moving football.
Yeah, there's a product called Intercloud, and Intercloud is an IP-based intercom.
Okay.
That's really cool that you're talking just like you're
Yeah.
talking. It's
Yeah.
audio only, but it's just like an
Right.
intercom. The other
How
thing
do
I
you
want
deal
to say
with, if I
about,
could throw in a
And they're
question?
super functional.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you deal with all that latency when you have all these multiple streams coming in?
yeah, well, that's the key, I think, and I'll let you speak to latency because that is an issue.
I mean, it's not significant latency when you're like less than a second. But what you're not going to do is you're not going to use a sync. They're working on it. They're super close to where we can sync these signals coming in. So there's some sort of clock built into it. So you're not going to literally switch a show live of, multiple cameras and everything be completely in sync.
Yeah.
They're not doing that
It's
yet.
kind of
It's
the
getting
difference
close though.
between like the third grade class marching in sync versus like the North Korean army. We're not the North Korean army yet. They're like in sync.
Right. And hopefully we're
But
not.
you know, I was gonna say is that like years ago, it's been like a few years, but NP and most of us video guys, we were not broadcasters. We would walk past those booths. It was the future, and I was like, I don't know what that even means. It can't be high
Yeah.
quality, right? And all of a sudden, here we are. We are like accelerating the development of video over IP because that's what all this stuff is. That's what all these little boxes and tools are. So you do need to do a little bit
Yeah.
of research. I think that there's going to be other SRT type protocols that
Oh,
are
sure.
developed because
Oh,
it's
oh
calling
yeah.
for it, and we like it. We like the fact that I don't have to travel. That's a big cost in production.
Yeah.
So let's figure some of that out,
I, th-
and we're going to
I
have a
think
better production.
and another thing is, I mean, when you're talking sub-second latency or even a second latency at a convention, if we have two cameras pointed at the same subject, if I switch them remotely, yeah, they're probably not in sync. But the fact is, I still have a TD on site
Right.
switching my SDI based signals. So my directors and my support crew may not be on site, but so you are getting frame accurate switching from your master switch.
Yep.
But the fact is, multiple people can be watching these signals all over the place. And a lot of times, if I'm switching from Oliver to Rich, I don't know they're a second off anyway. I
Right.
don't. Two cameras aren't trained on the same subject. We don't know there's latency anyway.
Yeah.
And
Then
if
of
there were
course
two
you have
seconds of
wireless.
latency right now, we wouldn't know it.
Wireless seems to be like the next thing. So now I'm in a place where I can't plug into somebody's network. And I was always like in
Yeah.
early streaming. If I was at a site, I'm not using their Wi-Fi at all. I want to be plugged in to a connection that is solid.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not using Wi-Fi for that. And I think the same goes now, even in a
Right.
studio situation, NDI between machines. This is going to be through a switch. It's going to be connected by wires.
Right. Depending on what you're doing, I've also become sort of an IT network engineer, only be out of necessity. I hate it, but yeah, when you're doing true NDI out of a camera, it's 100 megabits a second stream out of a camera, and remember it's going to be bidirectional, and I've got 5 cameras, and then I've got monitoring going on and all this. A gigabit switch, that's filled up in a jiff. So you're going to be a managed switch with where all your NDI ports are coming in, and um, controlling that data. And a lot of times you may have a 10 gig NIC in your computer with fiber coming in and out. So now you're looking at how all your data is structured, where is all that data moving, where are your recorders happening. So it's quite
Well,
handy. I mean,
yeah,
through
luckily,
one
10
Ethernet
gig.
cable. I mean, we have these cameras, PTZs, or like PoE, which is power over Ethernet. So you're getting power, direction, video, tally. I think they have a point now where you can get comms through that as well. Even though they're PTZs, you can have other people out there. So one little Cat 6, I mean, set up in a conference is amazingly great. And if I'm a nice guy, so I wrap up my Ethernet cable, but frankly, cable is so cheap compared to labor. I'd rather leave 1,000 feet at Cat 6 and just take my cameras away. But the convenience of one cable, I mean, you remember the beta deck days. It's 13 cables in and out of a beta deck
Yeah.
to get these things working.
Right.
So, yeah, the technology advances is awesome.
Yeah, and 10 gig E is the price is going to come down real fast. I think, especially starting now. It has been coming down,
Yeah.
but a 10 gig switch, the cards, it's all really accessible now. It was a little esoteric
Right.
even a year ago. A year ago, when I bought my iMac Pro and it had 10 gig, we had aggregated gigabit, so 2-lane gigabit switch, right? That was great.
Right,
So
right.
me, I said, can I aggregate my 10 gig? I want this to be really fast. We're all going to be sharing it, 10 gig. Very expensive, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, when we or you or you're trying to do anything on set, I mean, the tools of the trade are now aren't just like decimators and things like that to switch signals around. It's you're going to take a little network switch, you're going to take a router, you're going to control all your IP addresses, and you're going to do a lot of these things yourself. You're not going to rely on the venue for any of that kind of internal switching. So you want to have, you got doing a 3 camera shoot, you're going to control it and what's going out over your network. And as you're producing content, I mean, a lot of the interviews. One interview I was privileged to do with Tim Wilson from Cal a few months back, of pivoting and all this. And the fact is, when this COVID thing first hit, nobody was traveling anywhere, nobody was doing anything, and I record like 10 interviews a week remotely. So it's, what did you do? You had a lighting guy, you had an audio guy, you had a camera guy, you had a producer, maybe an associate producer to go out and do an interview. Now we're doing this. Okay, Rob, tilt your camera down. We got too much headroom. Let's turn off that light in the back because it's right over. We are mentoring every interviewee now.
Yeah.
That we used to spend 2 or 3 hours of a crew on setup to do a 45-minute interview. Now we're teaching everybody online how to do our jobs, basically. It's never going to be close to what you guys do, but teaching them how to do their cameras, how to set up, and how can we get the best quality out of a $90 webcam coming back to me. And it's, position the light over here. Rich, spin your desk 180, please, and open your blinds so you don't have that heavy backlight.
Yep.
But the cool thing is, when they're dialing into you, if you have a paid account, I think Skype, I don't know if it's included in free Skype, but you have to pay for Teams, but you can get direct NDI out of these programs.
Yep.
So that means if you need to conduct an interview that you can't send a crew or you can't go yourself, you can still get as high quality a possible interview remotely. And cool thing about Teams is, if I have 5 people, I get 5 NDI streams coming out with separate audio.
So what is
So
that?
I can record each of you.
What is that person called? Because, think about even 3-4 years ago, the DIT. All of a sudden there was a DIT. What's a DIT all of a sudden on the set, right? So then that became a commonplace thing that we're going to transfer, or with certain footage, we're going to actually do
Yeah.
a one-pass kind of LUT on the thing, so we can look at it. But now you've got this sort of this network person, but they have to be a network person that isn't just a straight up computer network. This is more video. So understanding these new tools, I mean, there's going to be a name for that person. I don't know if it's just video network,
Yeah, some sort of network a video network engineer or something.
Yeah.
But it's usually, unless your job is really big, you're not going to have that person. It's going to be you. So I don't know. I spend 2 to 3 hours a day, a few minutes at a time, in my Facebook groups and on Creative Cow. And what are the trends? What's happening? How do we solve these issues? I think I do. I rely on the community the last 6 months more than I ever have. There is no time to figure this stuff out. You have to go and say, hey man, how are you doing this? Because it can get really complex, and you usually don't have the time. You have a conference coming up, or something just needs to get done in the next couple of days. You're not going to figure out SRT. You can get it working, like anything. I can get into After Effects. I can kind of do this and that, but you're not going to want to pay for that product. So, this stuff, I mean, I'll grant it to the vendors. They've really ramped up. Zoom has changed 50 times in the last 6 months in its offerings and what it can do, and so is everybody else. So it's, what does your customer expect? I think I wanted maybe digressing a bit too much to the actual work that I'm doing, but how do we get back on the set? there's tools out there, and you have to, I think production people need to look at what's the streaming community doing and search for those terms. How do we get, video from point A to point B, and what's the purpose? Is it merely to just look over the shoulder of somebody, or do we need to capture that information remotely? And when you're on the set, you're not, Wi-Fi is completely out. Doesn't matter what, that's out. And then trying to get to the customer's internet. I coming from that corporate world of production, it's like, man, they are locked down, and we do a lot of medical and health related and insurance related stuff. They are locked down, and you are not getting to their network with a wired connection. No way, no how. So how do I now get my signal out? So you talked about like Teradek, yeah, like the live view units. There's Mushroom Networks, which I have. I thought I had it laying here. Yeah, I mean stuff like these Netgear Nighthawks. I mean, this will do 100 and well, AT&T will do 150 gigabits on the upside, or 150 megabits and a gig on the downside. So you can connect this right to your laptop and get your own internet. So at 150 up, that's pretty healthy.
Yeah.
But to be completely portable, or solutions like the Mushroom box does what's called bonded cellular.
Yeah.
So it will connect, like these Verizon modems, these MiFi jobs. It'll take 4 of these at 5G and bond all the data and send it out. So it's Fios on one side of the box and all these MiFi cards on the other side of the box, and it looks at packets. So it sends out this, and this. If my Fios drops off completely, the server on the other end that's aggregating data, it has 0 loss. And you pay for it. It's not cheap, but you have to look at how crucial is what you're doing. Going to YouTube can lose video for almost 30 seconds, and when it comes back, you're still going. People miss a little bit. Obviously, with doing a CEO interview, data loss is a real bad thing. So
right.
It's just a cost of doing business. But you can be completely mobile with these devices.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to mention while we said the cow a few times, and I hope people know what that is. They might not know what that is, because we're in Wisconsin, so we have a lot of cows. The Creative Cow.
We're in Pennsylvania. We have a lot of cows.
I believe it's still creativecow.net.
I get rid of cows for a living.
Yeah.
I demoed earlier.
I saw that.
So cow is communities of the world. So it's creative communities of the world, Creative Cow. And it's a great resource. That's how I know these guys, and many, many others. Jeremy, you mentioned, Tim Wilson, of course. So look that up. If you're not on the Creative Cow site, you should be. But I agree with you that I have gotten a lot of my knowledge from forums. If you want to learn about a product, look at their website and then see if they've got a user forum, and go see what people are like either doing with it or complaining about or really having success with. And that'll give you an idea if that's a good product. So that kind of thing is important. We're kind of getting closer.
I sit back and I look at what I look at what some people are doing with the various products, and I just go, man, I'm like not worthy. I'm like 1/10 of 1% of what any of this stuff can do. And there are some people doing crazy, amazing things with little bits of technology that I don't even know how they think of this stuff, but they're making it work.
Yeah. Yep.
It's just be forward thinking, share. That's why we're here tonight. Share your knowledge. Why go to the grave with it? There's no sense in that.